Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Raileigh Duschen was accepted into medical school as an undergrad. Her path to prosperity was assured. Or was it? Raileigh made the difficult decision that medical school was not the place for her. Instead, she realized that she had much healing to do before she could heal others. And this realization sent her on a most unconventional path where she is finding authenticity, happiness, and love. Join us for a light-filled conversation about following your inner heart and soul. Raileigh, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Happy to be here and happy to tell the story about transformation and pursuing your most authentic path in life and what that looks like, and that story of the human journey that we all go through. The story might look different, but at the end of the day, it's a collective journey and one that we all share.
So where did your journey start?
Okay, well, March 25th, 1997. But no, the journey I would like to share today really began as a young woman. I was an amazing scholar. I thought that to have a successful path in my life, I had to do everything I could to make that path for myself. So I did everything. High school, I did track, I did cross country, I did every band, played flute and saxophone, top in my class, got into a prestigious medical school scholarship going into college. So I already thought about my future before I even stepped on campus as a freshman. And as I continued that journey and was becoming this amazing scholar, my health started to decline and I started to get super sick, and all these generational diseases, whether it be physical or mental, started to manifest in my body. And I had to have this true moment with myself of questioning, can I be a healer? Can I be a doctor and help people on their healing journeys if I myself am not healed, if I am not healthy? And it was just a huge wake-up call when I was about 20, 21, 22, that I had to make a different choice for myself and really listen to what I needed. And for me, I had to start my own healing journey. And that's when that choice began. I gave up my prestigious scholarship and I started to pursue healing. I decided to become an entrepreneur through that healing journey and become a life coach. And today I empower other people to pursue their own holistic or alternative and natural healing that calls to them in their own lifestyles. And it's been a beautiful journey.
What a different take on healing than the traditional medical school route.
Yes. So it started when I made that choice to pursue healing for myself. I started taking a yoga class, and it was my first yoga class, and I experienced this peace in my body. I like to say the embodiment of healing, what that means. And I just felt this profound, peace I've never felt before. And I continued on that path, and it took me into other modalities such as martial arts. I do jiu-jitsu now. I went into farming. I went into backpacking and camping and eating organic foods and learning how to grow that food. And I would like to say it's the embodiment of healing. What does that mean? And where does it take you?
Well, I think just even taking that track towards better eating, towards organic foods, that alone is substantial, and it makes a big difference in terms of how you feel and how you view the world.
Absolutely. So when I gave up the medical school path for myself, I moved to the mountains of North Carolina. Ever since I was a little girl, like 8, I dreamt of farming. I was the first generation in my family to not grow up on a farm, growing our own food, having our own animals. So I decided to look up a farm that would take me in as an intern or apprentice. And I found this amazing, cute homesteading family in Silver, North Carolina. And I moved in with them, and they taught me how to grow vegetables and flowers and medicines and work with goats and ducks. And it was the most healing, beautiful time of my life. And I lived in a tiny little cabin, but it was the cleanest water I ever drank, straight out of a mountain well. It was the most healthy, delicious food. Never liked vegetables ever in my life until I had a real tomato, like off the vine, heirloom, organic. So delicious. Homemade sourdough bread, homemade mayonnaise we made from the duck eggs that morning, fresh basil. That right there is the medicine that I needed. I didn't even know.
One of the things you write about is learning to be happy and fulfilled unto yourself. What goes into that?
Learning to be happy and fulfilled within myself. I had to learn how to ask the questions, really go within. And meditation was that for me. Yoga helped me, first of all, become present in my body. So I had to discover what was I experiencing in my body in itself. Observing that I was carrying stress, not only in my mind, but I had this tension in my shoulders that was radiating into migraines and giving me vision problems and sleep problems. So that right there, that deep presence and stillness within showed me the truth of my health. And that way, through that present moment, I was able to look at it and then make different life choices to help heal it. And secondly, sorry, what was what was the question again?
We're just talking about how being happy and fulfilled unto yourself it's a very important quest, I think, and it's one that a lot of people don't go on. And what goes into that? I mean, I had somebody ask me recently about loneliness, and I said, I'm never lonely because I really enjoy my own company. I have lots of things I love to do. That is not part of my paradigm. And I think that's one of the things that's evolved from my own quest to be happy unto myself.
No, thank you for sharing that. It was moving to another state by myself. It was terrifying. I'm a young woman. I'm 5'2". I'm a woman of color. I had everything I owned in my car, and I moved to the mountains. There weren't a lot of people who looked like me, and it was very eye-opening. It was very lonely at times, even much after that. But I'm grateful for that time, those moments I had alone, like alone in the wilderness, literal wilderness sometimes, where I'd be backpacking miles and miles out away from the nearest society or town or people. But I got to fall in love with me and love her and love who she was without the identity of who I thought I had to be. Who was Raileigh, who wasn't going to be a doctor anymore? And could I validate her in her experience and her voice without that identity or that doctor behind my name? So I love solitude. I think it is deeply healing. It is absolutely necessary. And then when I can heal and connect deeply with my own heart, I can connect deeply with other people. And I think that's what heals our society and heals the world. It's a healing and a connection and a unity from the inside out that radiates from us.
And you bring up a really interesting point about identity. I think a lot of bumps in the road involve a shift in one's identity, which can be really difficult to deal with. How did you validate yourself when you walked away from the traditional route of becoming a doctor?
That's a deep question. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't at first. And I didn't realize that until 3 years later, which is present day, how much I didn't validate myself, how that showed up in a lack of confidence of me to continue pursuing my business and sharing that business boldly, which is conscious lifestyle coaching. I felt vulnerable. What if the dream didn't manifest how I thought it had to be in my own ego? And it never did. It never does. I allowed a higher power, self, universe, whatever you call it, to come in, and I ended up in this beautiful path, an amazing career in the outdoor industry. I didn't even know that was a thing or possible, but it's so me. But because I allowed that discovery, I was able to find it, and now I'm an executive in the outdoor industry that brings people together. I ended up using my bachelor degree in a pathway I never even knew existed, which is crazy.
No, it's wonderful. And I think the reality is life is not linear, but we live in a world that expects us to follow these linear paths. And it takes
Mm-hmm.
a lot of courage to step off that path and do something different. I mean, one of the things you said in your book that I think is so true is life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. Talk about that.
It's a quote that I kept trying to find the origin. I know, like Tony Robbins says it all the time, and many life coaches, spiritual leaders will say it, and it really just means learning to trust the process, to follow that call, and it began for me knowing that I had to heal, and that healing brought me into a very abundant career, a very abundant career that at the time when I told my mentors in the medical school, I don't want to do this, they told me, they projected fear to me and said, how will you have a voice in your community and make change without being a doctor or a lawyer? You can't quit. And it was I wasn't quitting being successful. That wasn't the choice. The choice was following the true and authentic path of success for myself. That most people don't have the courage, unfortunately, to take. And it's so terrifying, and it was absolutely horrifying. But when I continued on the path, I'd like to say there's always little guides, and I compare all of my work, especially in the book, to backpacking, being on the journey. You start the trail, let's say the Appalachian Trail, by yourself. But as you continue 100 miles, you meet people, and whenever you're hiking, whenever you meet someone on the trail, you always leave as a family because there's nothing else to do on a trail except get to know people deeply. And that's how it was for me. I met people who guided me deeper and deeper into the knowing of myself, and they saw my truth, which helped me honor myself and honor the path I was taking. And ultimately, 3 years later, I can tell you now with confidence and truth and say, I'm so glad I made those decisions. And I feel true honor.
Yeah, no, solitude is an interesting thing, particularly combined with nature. I think it allows you to slow down, be still, become cognizant of the voices in your head. And once you're cognizant of that, you can start making conscious choices. What do you want to hear in your head?
And do you like what you're hearing already? And then, being in nature, being in the wilderness, I got to hear kind of the conditioning that was already present. What was my relationship like with Raileigh deep inside? And I honestly didn't like what I heard. And sometimes I still don't. But being in nature, it helps me hear, it helps me see clear, and to make changes. When I go into the wilderness, I meet myself. I'm able to shake hands with her and then also be with her and tell her, what does she need to hear? I'm proud of you. I love you. You got this. And then I can go back home to the people I love and I can tell them, hey, I see you. I love you. You got this. It's my practice.
I think learning that we have control over how we choose to react to a situation is a really big aha moment. I mean, you really do have choice, and that can change your path.
Yes. I love that you brought this up. I don't know if you caught it in the book, but when I left college, so I moved to the farm in North Carolina, and then I learned about this thing called wilderness therapy. So I ended up becoming a guide for troubled youth and children, where I had 12 to 13 kids at a time. We'd go backpacking for 2 weeks at a time into the wilderness. Nothing to do, no technology except hike for hours, cook together, go see a waterfall, meditate, do some yoga, talk, talk some more, go to sleep, repeat. And there would be crisis moments. We'd be in a lightning storm in the wilderness, literal lightning, literal snow and hail and freezing temperatures with children, and I'm their guardian, and I'm only 22 at the time. Still trying to find myself with these teenage girls who are not much younger than me, and it put me in this situation of discovering, oh dang, I'm really strong. Oh, I'm a great leader, or I can adapt, I'm resilient. And it taught me so much grace and gratitude for little things like going home and taking a warm shower. I'll never not be grateful for hot water, for example.
One of the other things you talk about is attachment. And I think that's a huge topic. Because we're all attached to we're attached to the way things are. We're attached to our routines. We're attached to our identities, our degrees, our homes, our cars, you name it. And you have several steps on how to lose attachment. I'd like to get into that. And the first one is accept the present moment. Yeah. What's the strength in doing that?
So I made, for example, with my last story, I made a conscious decision to be in the wilderness with crazy teenage girls. I made that decision. There were often times I wanted to go home, but I couldn't. I literally couldn't. There was no transportation. I was stranded. And I made a decision to leave other souls. I had to learn to accept the present moment, no matter what it contained, and remind myself, why am I here? What is that higher guidance that has put me in this position trying to tell me, and how is it going to benefit me in my purpose later on? So that's where that came from. Pure surrendering.
Yeah, surrendering is powerful. It's incredibly powerful. The second step you have is believe now is enough.
Wow, hearing my words later is captivating, because I can go deep into where did that come from. Believing now is enough. I gave up success that was guaranteed. You know that if you go into medical school and you become a doctor, you're going to have this check coming in, or this status, whatever it is. People pursue high successful identities. I gave that up, and I ended up on a farm living in an 8x8 cabin, making just a couple, maybe $100 a week, right? But that, again, was the happiest time of my life. It was so little, and it was the most healthy and abundant time because of what it gifted me beyond monetary things. It gifted me my health, my sanity back. I got off of anxiety medications doctors put me on as a student. So that's where that comes from. It comes into gratitude. So the first step, surrendering. Second, gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude, I think, is so important. We can rewrite our stories with gratitude. So your third step is experience, don't attach.
I like to, I look back now and I realize when I left college, I was basically a traveling vagabond, but I was on this deep healing journey, and it was gifting me so much. And I had to understand that no matter where I was going or who I was meeting, it doesn't matter how long they were in my life, they gifted me something that is going to carry with me in my heart, in my soul, for the rest of my life. And on that journey, I had to give up so much. I gave up not only the medical school position, I gave up my family. I moved hours and hours and hours away for the first time as a young woman, away from my family, all my friends. I gave up a 5-year relationship with my best friend because he wasn't going where I was going. So that's what that means. It's knowing that it doesn't matter on the outside what you have cultivated or what you're attached to, because the love is inside of you. You're awakening the love that you carry. We are love. It is such a beautiful, magical thing to be alive. But we can't attach to other people or external things for that love. because number one, we are loved, so therefore we are not without it. And second, we're only here for a moment, all things. And once we accept that, which our society doesn't, it's very taboo to look at death or talk about death. But that is something I had to learn very quickly as a very young girl, what death was.
Why did you have to learn it as a young girl?
I grew up with my brother. He was actually blood my cousin, but we grew up as siblings. He had a neurodegenerative disorder. He was diagnosed at 8. He was 5 years older. So I grew up already as a caretaker, helping him walk and eat and bathe and enjoy life, playing games so that he could watch as a girl, or learning how to skate so he could experience it with me and I can tell him about it. Just being a tomboy to help, I guess, him live through me. But he passed away when I was 15. And yeah, at 15, that happened. My parents divorced. We lost our home. And it was just a lot to carry as a 15-year-old. But it helped me grow up really quickly. And I would say that is how I learned to detach and not ever lose that sense of love and wholeness in here. I always had to come right here. Which is a hard lesson.
That's a really hard lesson at any age. And at 15, it's a really tough lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Your fourth step, understand you are not a static being, but always growing. I love that.
Yeah.
How do we grow?
How do we grow? Being a farmer taught me so much about just the naturalness of life. Even now, where I am now is I'm in this stage of my life now where, okay, I'm building successful business. I'm getting my abundance. I'm about to buy a home. I just got a new car. Everything is great. But even this is not the end result. There's still going to be lifetimes more I'm going to be living. I'm only 25. So who is she going to become in another 10 years, another 10 years after that? But what is the underlying story that is unfolding for me? And it's not ever going to be how big my house is. It's never going to be how many titles and degrees I get in this life. It's going to be, who was Raileigh Duschen and what kind of love did she leave behind? And that's when I say we're growing, because as a farmer, I learned the value of the plant wasn't just in what fruited for you. It continues on. Whether you save those seeds and allow those seeds to become more fruit for later, or you return that plant to compost for the soil, it always cycles back. And that's how we are too. We're not here just to live and breathe and make money and die. There's love happening and life happening with every moment and every breath. And it's going to leave something, a legacy behind. And what is that legacy going to be beyond material thing?
And I think if you can simply be present and try to follow your heart, you will have an interesting life. It'll take you places you may not want to go sometimes, but that's okay. That's where you learn.
Yes. I love that you say interesting, because you said my book is interesting, and that's how I wanted it to be. And that's how I want my life to be. I don't want to know everything. I don't want to know the last chapter of every story first. Sometimes I creep and I look in the back of a book before I buy it. But you still don't know the whole story. That's going to be life at every step of the way. One of the hard lessons for me, especially during COVID, was giving up control, giving up the knowing and being comfortable in the deep unknowing, and letting the mystery of life be something that is fun and gives me joy. As an anxious personality type, that was hard for me to accept. Learning to love the journey before you get there. What if you never get there? That shouldn't matter. Again, right? Losing the attachment. It's not about me getting to the summit. I might not make it.
Well, where is there?
Exactly. I don't even know what's on top yet. What if I hike there and I'm like, oh, that was stupid. I regret this. But you can't be like that. I have to, with every step of the way and every breath, be like, okay, this is nice. I accept this moment. I appreciate this moment. I appreciate this flower. I appreciate this butterfly. I appreciate this air and this weather. I appreciate my body getting me here.
Yeah, you bring up the idea of control. I find control fascinating. I think it's a total illusion. We really have no control. All we can do is show up and be present. But as humans, we always try to control our environment, our path, our destiny, whatever. Do you wrestle with control ever?
Yes, that has been the lesson of my life in this past year. Or like I said, I think COVID was that wake up call for all humanity of how little control we have over our lives. It shook us up. I feel like when COVID hit the planet, for all of us, we were all impacted in some way. It's like the earth was in this little glass and we were all the little pieces of dice in it and we just shook up and the veil was dropped. And now we realize how instantaneously life can change for us. And I had to learn to accept that. And that was at that time when I realized a lot of things weren't working for my life, but I gave up for a moment. I moved back to Florida at that time. I wanted to be with family and I felt afraid, just really afraid that I made the wrong choice. I should have gone to medical school or I should have stayed in that relationship. But ultimately, my higher guidance knew the whole time where I was supposed to be and I was called back and I moved back and I'm so glad I did. But I had to really surrender and give up that control and follow my intuition. But I live in a society where I'm not taught to trust my intuition, ultimately not really taught to think for myself. I'm given structure, and structure is great. It lays a foundation to survive. But when you go beyond just surviving, when you go into living, that is when you have to follow and listen to what your heart is telling you. And that's not going to look like anything anyone ever is going to tell you. No one can tell you how to live. No one can tell you how to be. We cannot derive or seek answers or validation outside of ourselves. At the end of the day, it comes from here, within. And that for me was a very hard lesson to learn, but I have to trust. I like to say you have two choices in life. It's either going to lead you towards love or fear. If you choose love, you can't go wrong. You might not know where it's taking you. You might not have the answers right now. You just have to trust that it is for a higher purpose, and that purpose is always going to be love. And that's how you give up control.
Well, no, I think trust is really important, actually. And it's easier said than done. I think it's something we have to work on, not all the time, but we have to, it's a constant evolving process that you have to really dedicate yourself to.
Yes.
There's no quick, fast answer. Yeah.
Every day is a battle. Every day you have to remind yourself what you have chosen and why you're choosing it. And I hope, and I'm sure it is from a loving place, because ultimately that's the driving force that's going to get you out of bed every morning. Like Pam loves building relationships and connecting with people and the stories people share and what we can learn. Raileigh loves opening the doors for more people to go into nature and feel empowered. That's what gets me up out of bed every single day. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes I don't want to. But ultimately, you have to. You got to eat, right? You got to drink water and do things. And sometimes the day doesn't go very well. But we get up every day anyway. And we try again. And we try to be a little bit less afraid than the day before. And that's all we can do.
I think rewriting those fear scripts is really important. And in order to do it, you have to become conscious of them.
Conscious of your own fear is difficult because sometimes we don't really know where that fear comes from. Sometimes it's so deep within, we don't even remember where it comes from. Trauma like that can happen. But that's where the present moment for me is so important. In meditation, taking time to get out of the mind and to be in the body. I love martial arts, for example, because for a moment, for an hour every other day, I'm on the mat, and all that matters for me is maintaining my breath, thinking. I'm still using my mind in a way that is healthy, and I have to use intelligence of what move is going to help me get out of the situation. And trying again, getting up off the mat. It's a practice. It's a meditation. It's a medicine. But being in the present moment is always going to show you who you really are and what your experience is. What kind of thoughts are you having? What kind of fears are driving you? And then our ultimate goal, once we look at it and we perceive it, we let it go. It's a shedding over and over again of fear. But we have to put ourselves in position sometimes to look at the fear and feel it and experience it, and therefore we can move through it and let it go. And that's hard, I understand.
What advice would you have for somebody facing a really tough bump in the road?
Be forgiving, show yourself grace, and just committing to don't give up, stay committed, but forgive yourself when you do fail, because that's also ultimately part of the lesson, right? We have to experience the darkness so we can understand and be grateful when the sun does shine, when that storm has passed. It's all part of the lesson, light and the dark. And it is always, just remember, it is always still guiding you somewhere more beautiful. You will understand one day. You will have the clarity. Sometimes you're not supposed to. And I compare it to like a seed. You are a seed. And for that seed to grow, you have to literally bury it into the ground, into the soil. You can't see it. You don't even know what's going to happen to that seed. But you just have to trust the process and nourish it with water and some love. And one day you're going to see that little sprout. And it's going to make sense. And then you continue from there. But I'll just say be forgiving, be trusting, have faith, and continue on with each breath.
If you could rewrite your story, would you?
No, I wouldn't. Which says a lot. On my 25th birthday, I realized I had this meditation with myself of I've lived a quarter of my life, I've made some crazy decisions, and I'm here. And I can truthfully say I don't have any regret. If you asked me a year ago, I maybe would have said maybe I do. But it showed me this lesson in my life. I'm going to have many more lessons in my life. But this one example of giving up that identity to become something else showed me that there will be more times in my life of the unknown, the deep unknown. But I'm going to trust even more deeply now that it is for purpose. And that's so beautiful. So no, I love my story, every part of it, every pain, every fear, every trauma. Because it made me who I am today, and now I can use those tools and those medicines from those experiences and share with other people.
Thank you for listening. I hope you'll support this podcast by becoming a Bump 2 subscriber. Buy us a cup of coffee. It's your support that makes this podcast and website possible. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life.